Here we have the equation x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. In factor form, it's x plus 2 times x plus 3 equals 0, assuming that everybody knows how to factor this. Okay. Now, we want to substitute x equals -2 into this equation and see what we get. So that means we're going to replace this x by -2 and this x by -2 and see what we have. Okay. We substitute x equals -2. That means we replace x by -2. Means we're going to have -2 plus 2 times -2 plus 3. So that both of these x's become -2's. There's no -2x. So write a little caution here. Okay. We replace difference between replacing and putting in a -2x. Okay, so once we have this, well, can you evaluate that? Can you do the arithmetic and tell me what you get? Okay, so if we do this now, what's -2 plus 2? Well, we can kind of visualize that on the number line. We've got 0 here, 1, 2, 3 here. -1, -2, -3 here. If we go -2, that means like we start at 0, then we go 2 units to the left. And then from there, we go +2, which means we go 2 units to the right. So here's -2 plus 2. We see that -2 plus 2 equals 0. So we have now 0 and -2 plus 3. We're going to draw it, but if we want -2 and then plus 3, 1, 2, 3, we'd end up at 1. And then 0 times any number is 0, so we get 0 equals 0. And this checks out the equation. We get 0 equals 0, then the number that we substituted makes the equation true. So that okay. X equals -2, it's going to be true because you have 0 times 0. If x was -3, we could do -3 plus 3. We go 1, 2, 3 in the negative direction, and then 1, 2, 3 in the positive direction. Okay. So we have two solutions. So the equation x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Has solutions -2 and -3. Now, another way to solve the equation is we can say, all right, let's see, x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0, so that x plus 2 times x plus 3 equals 0. And now we can split this into two equations. This is going to be true if x plus 2 is 0. If x plus 2 is 0, it's going to be 0 times whatever x plus 3 is, and multiplying by 0 gives us 0. So we have x plus 2 equals 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. And we can solve each of these equations. Okay, now people like to do this, so I'm going to do it, although I don't like it. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides here. And I'm going to get x equals -2. I subtract 3 from both sides, and I get x equals -3. So x could be -2 or x could be -3. Each of those is a solution. Okay, so we get this by solving the equation rather than just by looking at it and figuring out that, well, if x is opposite this number, it's going to give us 0. Or if x is opposite this number, it's going to give us 0. Now, if we have the equation (2x minus 5 times x plus 7), make it x minus 7. This breaks into two equations. Now, can you see the way this broke into two equations and break this into two equations? Okay, now I'm not sure if I was recording back here. So let's just summarize real quickly. We can factor this expression to get this equation. We can substitute x equals -2. That means we replace x by -2, replace x by -2. Now caution, we replace x by -2. We don't include the x. We would not write, instead of -2 plus 2, we would not write -2x plus 2. When we substitute, x is gone and it's replaced by -2, there's no x left. So we have to do that. Now, once we do that, -2 plus 2 is 0. We can see that on the number line. We start at 0, go -2, we go -1, -2. Now, if we go plus 2, then we got to go 1, 2 in the positive direction, and we end up back where we started, which was at 0. So this confirms that that -2 plus 2 is 0, and then 0 times 1 is 0. And we check that because that shows that if x is -2, this equation does give us 0. So we summarize x plus 2 times x plus 3 is 0 if x is -2. And by extension, also, if x was -3, -3 plus 3 would give us 0. And we'd be multiplying -1 here in this case by 0 to get 0. Okay. Now, since x squared plus 5x plus 6 is the same thing as x plus 2 times x plus 3, just looks different, then this equation has solutions 2 and -3. Another way to approach this is by just breaking this down into a couple of linear equations and solving them. So we have x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Well, factoring, we get x plus 2 times x plus 3 equals 0. Meaning then that either x plus 2 is 0 or x plus 3 is 0. Now, I've added -2 to both sides of this equation, and that gives us x equals -2. I've added -3 to both sides of this equation, and that gives us x equals -3. And of course, these solutions match these solutions. Now, if we have the equation 2x minus 5 times x minus 7 equals 0, this breaks into two equations. 2x minus 5 equals 0, or x minus 7 equals 0. Now, I don't really need this picture here, it's kind of in the way, so we want to remember what it means to add two numbers. Okay, anyhow, 2x minus 5 is 0. Well, I'm going to do this in the form where I add 5 to both sides. Rather than putting plus 5 down here and plus 5 here, I just tack it on to both sides. We could do the same thing over here. And knowing that minus 5 plus 5 is 0, we get 2x equals 5. Over here, knowing that minus 7 plus 7 is 0, we get x equals 7. Over here, then, we divide both sides by 2, and we get x equals 5 halves. So x equals 5 halves and x equals 7 are our two solutions. So 5 halves is a solution, or 7 is a solution. So this is how we solve an equation by factoring. Let's try another one. Write down x squared minus 4x minus 5 equals 0. See if we can factor this one. Okay, so we have x squared minus 4x minus 5 equals 0. We can verify, and hopefully you are easily able to factor this. We get x minus 5 times x plus 1 equals 0. It breaks into the equation x minus 5 equals 0, and the equation x plus 1 equals 0. Okay. Either way, x minus 5 equals 0, then we got 0 times this, and that's going to give us 0. If x plus 1 equals 0, then this is 0, and when multiplied by whatever this is, it's going to give us 0. Well, we solved the equation. And I'm just going to write out the steps that indicate we need to get used to writing out our steps. We get x equals 5, and we can verify. We put 5 in here. 5 minus 5 gives us 0. 5 plus 1 is 6. 0 times 6 gives us 0. And here we subtract 1 from both sides. And now we see that x equals -1 works up here. Now, if we plug 5 in up here, we're going to get 0, because this is the same as this, but let's make sure we factor correctly. We plug 5 in up here, we get 25 minus 20 minus 5, which is 20 minus 25, and that's 0. We plug in -1, x squared is 1, and then we have minus 4x, which is minus 4 times -1, that's plus 4. So we have 1 plus 4, which is 5, minus 5 equals 0. And you can plug those in and write them out yourself. Okay, ignore the physics you see over here. let's and erase this one. Now let's do another one. Make sure we can be seen. We can. Okay, so let's try. X squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0. Can we factor this and then solve the two equations that we get and determine the value of x? Okay, so we factor this. We get x plus 3 times x plus 4 equals 0. Splitting into two equations, x plus 3 equals 0, x plus 4 equals 0. Subtract 3 from both sides. And here subtract 4 from both sides. I write the word or here. This logic is important. You take my word for that and just do it. Then we can plug these back in. If we plug x equals 3 back in here, x equals -3, we get 9. 7 times -3 is -21. And plus 12. Well, 9 and 12 is 21, and we have -21, so we're going to get 0, so that works. Now, you might have to plug it in here, even use a calculator in some cases. But you just plug the number and you replace x with -4, and you're going to find you get 16 minus 28 plus 12. 16 and 12 is 28. You got minus 28. Everything works out. Now, when I say check, I say parentheses okay. I mean, actually plug these numbers in. Okay, now I factored this one for you. Okay, so what do we get now? So once this is factored, split into two equations and solve them. So see what you get. Okay, so this splits into two equations. Everybody did this very nicely. So we get these two equations. Now, we say the appropriate thing to do here is subtract 4 from both sides. Let's just concentrate on this equation. 4 minus 4 is 0, so now we just have 3x. 0 minus 4 is -4. So now we divide both sides by 3. And we get x equals -4 with 3. On this side, we add 2 to both sides. And we get x equals 2. So what we get, there's a big or between this side and this side. We get x equals -4/3, or x equals 2. Now the trick is factoring this, but we just completed, and people did pretty well on this, factoring trinomials when the leading term isn't 1. And that's a little tougher. We spent a lot of time on that last week, so review that if necessary. But that's basically it. Let me do one more example. And enough board space here. x squared plus five x equals 0. There's no number on the end. Because x squared plus five x plus 6 equals 0. Well, it'll be a lot like that one. If there's no plus 6, there's no anything. What we have to do in a case like this is fairly simple. We just write this as x times x plus 5 equals 0. Because of course, if we multiply x by x, we get x squared. Multiply x by 5, we get 5x. And this, again, splits into two equations. One of them is x equals 0, or x plus 5 equals 0. Well, it's a simple step to add -5 to both sides here and get x equals -5. But here's our solution. If you don't have a number on the end out here, you can do this. One more quick example. Now, what if we had oh yeah, I'll do this, okay. Well, this means we would have, I don't like that. Oh, x plus 1. Okay. Now we've got a linear factor here, over here. We're going to do the same thing we did before. X squared plus 5x factors into x times x plus 5. So now we have 3 factors. What are we going to do with this? Well, whole thing's going to be 0 if x plus 1 is 0. Or if x equals 0. Or if x plus 5 equals 0. So our solution here is x equals -1. Or x equals 0. Or x equals -5. As long as all these things are multiplied together and equal to 0, we know that any one of them can give you 0. So that's the whole idea.